Okay, so this is the fourth installation of Paradise Lost. I'm starting at line 630-ish, 628, 629. You can see it here at the top of the page. Now we have been watching the angels running around hell, doing all their little games, waiting for Satan to go visit Earth, and we begin here with Satan flying up to Earth from hell. Meanwhile, the adversary of God and man, Satan, with thoughts inflamed of highest design, puts on swift wings and towards the gates of hell explores his solitary flight. Sometimes he scours the right-hand coast, sometimes the left. Now shaves with level wing the deep, then soars up to the fiery concave towering high. And here comes a new epic simile. As when, far off at sea, a fleet descried hangs in the clouds by equinoctial winds, close sailing from Bengala or the isles of Ternate and Tinador, whence merchants bring their spicy drugs. They on the trading flood through the wide Ethiopian to the Cape ply, steaming nightly toward the pole. So seemed far off the flying fiend. Start noticing the word seemed. At last appear hell bounds, high-reaching to the horrid roof, and thrice threefold the gates. 3 folds were brass, 3 iron, 3 of adamantine rock impenetrable, impaled with circling fire yet unconsumed. Before the gates there sat on either side a formidable shape. Let me pull this up. The one seemed woman to the waist and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast, a serpent, armed with mortal sting. About her middle round a cry of hellhounds, never ceasing, barked with wide Siberian mouths, full loud and rung a hideous peal. Yet, when they list, would creep, if aught disturbed their noise, into her womb and kennel there. Yet there still barked and howled within unseen. Far less than these vexed Scylla bathing in the sea that parts Calabria from the hoarse Trinasarian shore, nor uglier follow the night hags, when called in secret, riding through the air she comes, lured with the smell of infant blood, to dance with Lapland witches while the laborious moon eclipses at their charms. The other shape, if shape it might be called, that shape had none distinguishable in member, joint, or limb, or substance might be called, that shadow seemed, for each seemed either. So on one side you have this female creature, and on the other you have this sort of shadowy blob. Black it stood as night, fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed his head the likeness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat the monster moving onward came as fast with horrible strides. So here we go. Hell trembled as he strode. The undaunted fiend, what this might be admired, not feared. God and his Son except, created thing not valued he, nor shunned, and with disdainful look thus first began. So the creature thinks that he's going to scare Satan, but Satan isn't scared of anybody, except, of course, God and Jesus. Whence and what art thou, execrable shape, that darest, though grim and terrible, advance thy miscreated front athwart my way to yonder gates? Through them I mean to pass, that be assured, without leave asked of thee. Retire or taste thy folly, and learn by proof hell-born not to contend with spirits of heaven. To whom the goblin, full of wrath, replied, Art thou that traitor angel? Art thou he who first broke peace in heaven and faith, till then unbroken, and in proud rebellious arms drew after him the third part of heaven's sons, conjured against the highest, for which both thou and thy outcast from God are here condemned to waste eternal days in woe and pain? And reckonest thou thyself with spirits of heaven, hell-doomed, and breathest defiance here and scorn where I reign king, and to enrage thee more, thy king and lord? So basically he claims monarchy. I'm not only the king around here, the creature says, but I'm also your king. Back to thy punishment, false fugitive, and to thy speed add wings, lest with a whip of scorpions I pursue thy lingering, or with one stroke of this dart strange horror seize thee, and pangs unfelt before. So spake the grisly terror, and in shape so speaking and so threatening grew tenfold more dreadful and deformed. On the other side, incensed with indignation, Satan stood unterrified, and like a comet burns that fires the lengths of Orphic huge, and in the Arctic sea, and from his horrid hair shakes pestilence and war. Each at the head levelled his deadly aim, their fatal hands no second stroke intended, and such a frown each cast at the other, as when two black clouds with heaven's artillery fraught come rattling on over the Caspian, then stood front to front, hovering a space till wins the signal blow to join their dark encounter in mid-air. So frowned the mighty combatants that hell grew darker at their frown. So matched they stood, for never but once more was either like to meet so great a foe, and that would be Jesus. And now great deeds had been achieved, whereof all hell had rung, had not the snaky sorceress that sat fast by hell gate and kept the fatal key risen, and with hideous outcry rushed between. "Oh, Father! What intends thy hand," she cried, "against thy only son? What furious son possesses thee to bend that mortal dart against thy father's head? And knowest for whom? For him who sits above and laughs the while at thee ordained his drudge to execute what are his wrath, which he calls justice, bids, his wrath which one day will destroy ye both." She spake, and at her words the hellish pest forbare. Then these to her Satan returned. "So strange thy outcry and thy words, so strange thou interposest, that my sudden hand prevented spares to tell thee, yet by deeds what it intends, till first I know of thee what thing thou art, thus double formed, and why in this infernal vale first met thou call'st me father, and that phantasm call'st my son. I know thee not, nor ever saw till now sight more detestable than him and thee." Oops, I didn't pull this up, sorry. Here we go. To whom thus the portress of Hellgate replied. That should sound familiar to you. That's actually lifted a little bit from Macbeth. "Hast thou forgot me then? And do I seem now in thine eyes so foul, once deemed so fair in heaven, when at the assembly and in sight of all the seraphim with thee combined in bold conspiracy against heaven's king? All on a sudden, miserable pain surprised thee, dim thine eyes, and dizzy swum in darkness, while thy head, flames thick and fast, threw forth, till on the left side, opening wide, likest to thee in shape and countenance bright, then shining heavenly fair, a goddess, armed, out of thy head I sprung. Amazement seized all the host of heaven. Back they recoiled afraid at first, and called me Sin, and for a sign portentous held me, but familiar grown I pleased, and with attractive graces won the most averse, thee chiefly, who, full oft thyself in me thy perfect image viewing, becamest enamored, and such joy thou tookest with me in secret, that my womb conceived a growing burden. Meanwhile war arose, and fields were fought in heaven, wherein remained, for what could else, to our almighty foe clear victory, and to our part loss and rout through all the empyrean. Down they fell, driven headlong from the pitch of heaven, down into this deep, and in the general fall I also, at which time this powerful key into my hand was given charge to keep these gates forever shut, which none can pass without my opening. Pensive here I sat alone, but long I sat not, till my womb, pregnant by thee, and now excessive grown, prodigious motion felt, and rueful throes. At last this odious offspring whom thou seest, thine own begotten, breaking violent way, tore through my entrails, that with fear and pain distorted all my nether shape, and thus grew transformed. But he, my inbred enemy, forth issued, brandishing his fatal dart, made to destroy. I fled and cried out, Death! Hell trembled at the hideous name, and sighed from all her caves, and back resounded, Death! I fled, but he pursued, though more it seems inflamed with lust than rage, and swifter far me overtook. His mother, all dismayed and in embraces forcible and foul, engendered with me of that rape begot these yelling monsters that with ceaseless cries surround me as thou sawest, hourly conceived and hourly born, with sorrow infinite to me. For when they list, into the womb that bred them they return, and howl and gnaw my bowels, their repast, then, bursting forth afresh with conscious terrors, vex me round, that rest or intermission none I find. Before mine eyes in opposition sits grim death, my son and foe, who sets them on, and me, his parent, would full soon devour for want of other prey, but that he knows his end with mine involved, and knows that I should prove a bitter morsel, and his bane whenever that shall be. So fate pronounced. But thou, O father, I forewarn thee, shun his deadly arrow. Neither vainly hope to be invulnerable in those bright arms, though tempered heavenly, for that mortal dint, save he who reigns above, none can resist.